Welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I'm your host, Karen E. Osborne, and I am so happy to reintroduce you to someone that you met actually not that long ago. It was really just at the beginning of this year, I think, because he's so prolific. He has so many books. And besides, he and I had such a good time talking about Sugar Bowl. We had a really good time. So we have R. Lee Procter, which is the name he writes under, but we're going to call him Rich. And let me just remind you a little bit about Rich. So, as I said, you met him earlier this year. He has two new different books to talk to you about. The last time we were talking about Sugar Ball, which was a novel of Negro League baseball, and it was and I'm going to put a link, guys, so that you can go back and look at that one because that was a great conversation, and it's a wonderful book. Then we decided we want to talk about his two of his other books. So just to remember, he used to be a disc jockey, an advertising copywriter, a writer producer for cable television, and a writer in the themed entertainment business. What does that mean?
Well, that covers a lot of ground these days. I started out as a writer for Walt Disney Imagineering, working on a project in Florida called Pleasure Island, where I wrote the characters in the show for the Adventurers Club, which was a club with kind of interactive theater going on. And then they also did a show called Forbidden Disney, which was a show sending up the Disney company, which Michael Eisner said, we want you to write a show that if anybody else did it, they'd sue us. And we did. So instead of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, we had a song called Super Conscientious Friendly Disney World Employees. Things like that. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, now themed entertainment business can be, I worked on the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. So who does the content for that? What do you see? What do you experience? There are shows, there are exhibits. We are doing, my company is now currently doing the United States Pavilion for the expo that's going to be in Osaka, Japan in 2025.
Wow.
We do that. We do distillery tours. Just won a big award for something I did, which is we do a tour of the new Las Vegas Raiders Stadium, Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. It's as opposed to just being a regular tour, it's a super high-end thing with a lot of media, a lot of storytelling. At one point, there's a 3D holographic illusion of a Raiders player greeting you in the locker room, things like that. So yeah, it's a great business. It's a lot of fun.
A fun life.
Yeah. It's because every subject is different, and it's like writing movies. Only you get to also build the theater that the
Yeah.
showed in.
Oh, yeah, and it's a surround round experience, right?
Yeah, it is.
You
The
use
tools you
all
have
the
these days are
senses.
the tools are astonishing. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, anyway, it's a huge amount of fun.
Sounds well, today we're going to talk about something equally as exciting. One is Rich's book, Claude Monet Designs Yankee Stadium, a love story. And we're also going to talk about a fun Christmas story, Sanity Claus, which is a humorous holiday romance. Now, too excited. So, so Rich, let's start with you write in so many genres.
Yeah,
You write in different and just telling us about your other creative work, everything's a little bit
sure.
different. So what inspires you? What makes you say this is the kind of book I want to write now? Or how does the inspiration come?
Basically what I'm looking for is the same thing I'm looking for when I work on themed entertainment projects, which is, you know, it all comes every single thing I've ever done. Radio disc jockey, radio commercials, everything is about beginning, middle, and end, sweeping the public sweeping readers up into an adventure where they get to travel along with a character, and the character has a change or revelation or life-changing experience that causes the reader to have some kind of some epiphany as well. So you start with that. What's the change? Who's the character? My inspirations are among other things, Charles Dickens, Christmas Carol. The Santa Claus is basically a version of a Christmas Carol, modern, updated. And Mel, the character in Claude Monet, is a character who is discouraged at the beginning and is redeemed. He relocates his mojo, and so
Start with Claude Monet. Let's start with that one. Tell us
okay.
about what's the premise of the book?
The premise of the book is that my character, I kind of wrote this. It's funny. I was going to put this in the beginning of the book. I said, I want Steve Martin to get the Academy Award he should have won for All of Me. So imagine like Steve Martin. He's a sort of very discouraged, down and out security guard for the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And all he does, and I visited the Met just to make sure I was on solid ground. All he does is sit there and stare at the paintings of his idol, Claude Monet. And we discovered that he wanted to be an artist as well. He was inspired by Monet, but circumstances did not allow him to become successful. Eventually, he gave up. Anyway, through a series of catastrophic circumstances where he gets fired and loses his rent-controlled apartment in New York, he ends up in a derelict building in the Bronx because that's the only place he can find to stay. He has a friend who takes him there. He has one painting left that he managed to keep from being thrown out. He tries to tack it to the wall breaks down, and what he discovers inside the wall is a roll of 14 canvases painted by Claude Monet that are designs for Yankee Stadium, and a journal that Monet kept during that year of 1921. So, he thinks this is either the greatest hoax of all time or this is actually true. And what happens is he reads the journal and he discovers, the story. And it's funny, I kind of wove fact and fiction together. I kind of said, how can I possibly make this work? How can it be logical that Claude Monet would do this? Well, in 1921, Monet was at a low point in his life because the president of France, what's his name? Anyway, he had promised Monet his own museum, but the president, Clemenceau, was tossed out of office, and the governing body in France said, we're going to use that money to pay widows and orphans from the Great War. Monet wasn't going to have his museum. So anyway, in my book, a woman shows up, president of the Bronx Art League, who is also the mistress of Jacob Rupert, owner of the Yankees. And said, and here's the thing, here's where the fact and fiction meet. Rupert was a beer baron. And Rupert just paid $100,000 to buy Babe Ruth from the Boston Red Sox. But it being prohibition, his entire ability to make money was decimated. So I posited that he had this mistress who was an heir to a Colorado silver fortune. And he said, I desperately need money for the ballpark. And she said to him, being president of the Bronx Art League, you can do it as long as you let me hire Claude Monet to design Yankee Stadium. And I mean, the joke of the piece is that when Monet sees the plans for Yankee Stadium, he knows nothing about baseball, of course, but he says, this is my dream. It's got everything I always wanted. It's got a cathedral exterior. He loved to paint cathedrals. It's got a broad outfield where he could put his haystacks. And, it's got an outfield fence where he could do his water lily murals with the warning track being water, so there's a reflecting pond. He was going to put a Japanese bridge from first to third base and fill in the infield with a koi pond. Anyway, so the hero's reading this book and he's looking at this art and he realizes he's got $600 million worth of art here. And the conflict comes in where there's a evil real estate developer, loosely based on a real evil New York real estate developer. I won't mention any names, but and he buys the derelict building and says, "Because I own this building, they're now mine." And so our hero's in despair, but his bitter ex-wife, who is a champion lawyer, says, "I'll take this case for free." Um, and what happens then is the two stories proceed that kind of rhyme with each other because our hero is
Mm.
reading about Monet falling in love with this woman as he paints her, and our hero is inspired by being with this woman who he's falling in love with. He takes a risk and says, "I want to paint you. First time in 20 years I picked up a brush." And as he
Mm.
does it, he actually hears Monet's voice in his brain saying, "Just stop thinking and start painting," you know? So it's this kind of wonderful, anyway. So all right, the hero is redeemed by Monet's redemption because Monet, who at that time of his life had emphysema, he had arthritis, he had glaucoma, and he was still getting up at 4:30 in the morning to paint. You know, that is an artist. And
Yes,
and
yes.
my hero is going, "Wait a minute, if this guy can do this, what am I doing?" You know? And he picks up his brush and he anyway, so that's the premise of the
Sounds
book.
like it just sounds like a romp. And are you the life of the party? Like when people invite you over, are you always making people crack?
You know, not exactly. Let me tell you, yeah, when I was a kid, I was kind of a nerdy kid, pretty introverted. And I was always interested in humor because my parents always took the New Yorker, and when I was 7 or 8 years old, I was reading the cartoons and reading the casual pieces, and they were very, very appealing to me, and especially the cartoons. Anyway, I realized that if I could make bullies laugh that way, keep them from beating the crap out of me, which was it turned out to be something. So I said, I need to develop this talent. This is good. If I can not be beat up by people. So, the more I did it, the more I liked it, and then I realized had a talent for it.
You had talent for it, that you were good at this, that you were good at the
No, I
humor.
managed to make a living at it, which is just amazing to me.
So let's just go back to Mel for a minute. That's
Sure, sure.
your protagonist.
Right.
So tell me something you really, really like about him. Tell me something that maybe annoys you about him.
Well, let's see. The thing I like about Mel is that even though he's tried to kill the artistic instinct in him, and he pretends to have given up. He's spending all the time staring at Monet haystacks. The haystacks, I think, got me into Monet because, the haystacks, what Monet is saying is, I can take the plainest, most uninteresting thing in the world, and I can astonish you with the way the sunlight hits it.
Mm,
Mel just stares at these haystacks. So, unconsciously he still yearns to be an artist. So the fact that he's still, I guess the only annoying part is that he's given up. And to
mm.
me, life is it's like you got to just keep getting up and fighting. you
Yeah,
know,
like Monet did with
yes, yes.
all of those problems, and he still got up every morning. So
You know,
what's your excuse, Mel?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. A friend of mine once said something I thought was wonderful. He said, "You not only have to have talent, you have to have the talent to have the talent." Meaning, you have to like if you take certain people like Elvis didn't have the talent to have the talent, if you know what I mean, because he let himself be destroyed by drugs and things. Whereas a Bruce Springsteen or something like that, he's in his 70s, he's still going strong. He's doing it for the art. You know,
yeah,
Jerry
yeah,
Seinfeld is worth $800 million, and he still gets out on stage and goes to comedy clubs because it's about the art. It's about finding the
yeah,
perfect joke. So
yeah.
that's what Mel figures out, and
It's about having a purpose too, right? It's
yeah,
about
well, not knowing what your purpose is, which is, the world tells you your purpose is to make money. But after these guys get enough money, they wonder, Elvis was in the 60s making all these horrible movies, and he's thinking, why am I unhappy? I'm making $1 million a year. And it's because he wasn't feeding his soul.
Wasn't feeding. I see that in people who retire
Right,
and their job was their purpose. So
right.
now they're just they can't think of what to do. They're unmoored.
Yeah.
But if they understood that they had a purpose, then it just carries you like Springsteen. It just carries you all the way through. Yeah.
No,
Purpose is
I would cite you as an example of that. Here you are. I know that you had a wonderful career, and now you're writing these amazing books. I mean, I,
thank
uh,
you.
one of my fondest dreams is to someday for somebody to say something like, your prose is like drinking from the drippings of a honeycomb. I was like, oh
Wasn't
boy,
that the sweetest review? That was such a
It
nice
was like
review.
I'm thinking, even if I paid somebody for a review, I don't think they could wax poetic like that. It was great.
I was very thrilled with that review of
Yes.
True Grace. I appreciate it. So shift to Sanity Clause.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And it's too late to have a Christmas story. Christmas in, June, Christmas in July, that's perfectly acceptable. So tell us about a little bit about this
Sure.
romance.
Sure. 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 This is another, turns out to be another redemption tale. Let me tell you how Santa Claus came about. Every year for I'd say about 15 years, my daughter and I would read A Christmas Carol out loud, the 4 days before Christmas. Uh,
Hmm.
and it became this tradition. And the amazing thing was every time we read it, we got something new out of it. And it's just an amazing thing. It just think of anything that's 180 years old and still works just about perfectly. So I
Yeah.
said to myself, okay, here's my goal. Uh, I'm going to write a book that's 28,000 words long, like A Christmas Carol.
Uh-huh.
And importantly, I'm going to write a book that has as radical a character arc as Dickens creates. I'm going to take the most unredeemable character imaginable, and then I'm going to take readers on a journey, and I'm going to produce a logical circumstance where this character once again rediscovers his soul. He finds out who he really is. In this case, my way of doing that was I did a lot of research on near-death experiences. And people who go through that often have that kind of life change. They come out
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
And this guy, so he's a real estate developer. He has a bunch of shopping malls that he wants to sell. Japanese want to buy him. The deal is that all the malls have to be in profit. Well, the first mall he ever bought, which is now kind of a rundown dump, because somebody else built a huge power center 7 miles away, which has stolen all his anchor stores, is losing money. His group of people who works for him say just sell it, get rid of it. But he early in his life he had this thing where he had an apartment building and the people there were trying to drive the price down to get him to sell, and he went there undercover and ferreted it out. So he said, no, 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 you're wrong. This is a bunch of people who are trying to tank the value of this so they can buy it themselves. I'm going to go undercover and I'm going to ferret out this plot. Well, if you go to a shopping mall, where's the best possible way to observe what's going on in the mall during Christmas time? You become Santa Claus. You sit in the middle of the mall on this, and and of course, the joke of the piece is that um, he does this, and you cannot possibly think of a worse human being to be a Santa Claus, because as he said, he's this unredeemable Scrooge-like character. He hates kids. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. He's annoyed by this, and nobody knows who he is because he has a whole thing about anonymity going on. So the guy's he's going to get fired by the mall manager. Only the people in the mall who have these kind of pathetic little stores going on, they all think, well, this guy's just another pathetic homeless alcoholic, and it's our job to help save him. So these people come in and they start helping him. And this guy can't figure it out. Why are they doing this? They don't know who I am. There's no money in it. and especially a woman who runs a cookie franchise takes him under her wing and teaches him how to be friendly with children, and surround him, and he's just astonished by this. Then the circumstance comes down where he has the he gets beaten up. He has a child on his lap, and a guy shows up who is kind of an angry guy and says, you've taken my child, blah, blah, blah. There's a big fight, and he gets beaten up. And anyway, and this woman takes him into her home. He's got no insurance. They try to take him to the hospital, but his ID is dodgy. And she takes him to her home and nurses him back. And at one point he asks her, what possible reason you have for doing this? And she says, well, this is just what people do, don't they? This is why we're here. And his brain breaks, and
Yeah.
it has,
His epiphany.
yeah, it has kind of a trick ending.
Don't tell us the trick
I
ending.
don't want to tell you the end. I'm only about halfway into the story at this point. So anyway, then it's like what happens, and it's a lot of fun. I really, really had a good time writing it. And because there's so many the scenes where the sad little people in this mall come and help this guy out because they think he's so pathetic, and from his point of view, he's you have an interior view of his life going, I don't need these people. Who are these idiots? But on the other hand, they're saving him. So
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like you have a lot of fun. A lot
yes,
of
I
fun.
did. I really felt 28,000 words, and I think I've achieved the mammoth character arc I was looking for.
Excellent. Excellent. This is so good.
Yeah.
So as you know, this is what are you reading? What are you
Yeah.
writing? We've talked about all your writing. Although, are you working on something now?
Well, I've got a book coming out in I'm doing kind of the final proofing of it right now. It's coming out from Black Rose Writing. It's kind of the big one. It took me 3 years to write. It's called Prosperity, Pennsylvania. And it's a book that I hope addresses kind of what's going on in the sort of the country right now. I'm trying a middle path. It's about a sort of a Iraqi war vet who lives in Pittsburgh, who grew up in a town called Pulver Forge, Pennsylvania. And his best friend and a guy he was in Iraq with dies of an opioid overdose. And he goes back to this town, and it's just the worst Rust Belt kind of town. Everybody's given up, and he says to these people, "Look, and nobody's coming. You're going to have to do it yourself." So he gets drafted to run for mayor, and he makes a promise. He said, "Look, if I were mayor of this town, I'd put everybody back to work." And so now he's mayor, and he has to do that. And what happened in Havana, Cuba in 1991, when the Russians stopped sending $7 million a day and started sending nothing, which is what they did in Havana. This is called the special period in Havana. The people said, Castro is not going to do anything. And if we don't do something, we're going to starve to death. So they got together and they formed gardening communes. They tore up all the public land. They started growing their own food. They started having farmers markets where you could get this food they're growing. They formed kind of a barter economy. So, for example, if there's an 85-year-old woman who can't work in the fields, they said, okay, we're giving every worker a time dollar. That worker can pay you a time dollar to watch their children while they're farming. And what happens is the main thing that happens is he comes in and he says, what happens if you take we can't do anything, it's hopeless, and you flip it to we can do this. We change the context of the town. And it's like, what can we do for nothing? What can we do if the state doesn't save us and the country doesn't save us? And I did all this research.
Wow.
The fun part of the book is I said, this appears to be utopian, but every single thing I'm using in this book has happened someplace. And I have an underbook at the end where I show my work. I reveal my sources.
Wow. Wow. When does this come out?
Comes out in November.
November. All right.
Uh,
So when it comes out, you have to send me the cover and
no,
stuff. And
I would be delighted.
yes, I'll let our audience know that you heard it first here, people. But before before we go, Is there any books recently that you would like to share?
Sure, sure. Well, I'm really enjoying a book called After Annie by Anna Quindlen. I don't know if you're of Anna
Oh,
Quindlen.
yes.
She's
She's an
wonderful.
amazing writer. I haven't read that one, but she's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
great
it's
writer.
brand new and it's oh man. And once again, she really delivers the goods. There's somebody who really takes you on an emotional journey and makes you care about the characters. I read that, and I'm also reading a book called Reading Genesis by Marilyn Robinson, the woman who wrote Housekeeping.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Mhm.
this is it's a fascinating um, uh, like her understanding of the book of Genesis makes you see it in a completely different way. It's
Wow.
really
Say the name again.
it's called Reading Genesis by
Okay.
Marilyn Robinson.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
All
these are my
right.
two.
Well, this
Yeah.
has been so good. We have to go, people. But I know you've been enjoying this conversation immensely. I hope that you will please tell us, Rich, how people can find you, be in touch, know what's going on in your writing life.
Well, let's see. I'm on the usual places. I don't have a Twitter account, but I'm on Facebook. I have an Amazon page. I'm in Goodreads. My goal this year is to get better at social media. But yeah, so you can find me there. I have a blog under my Arlie Procter name. So those are all places you can.
Blog under which name? Under Arlie
The
Procter.
Arlie Procter. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
thinking of starting a
Yes.
Substack to support. I'm thinking of starting a Substack. I'm probably going to do this to support the prosperity book, and the Substack will be the lead characters blogging about their own. There's a guy that knows agriculture. There's a guy that sort of runs the political operation. There's a woman who's in charge of the publicity part of it, and just have them share, what they're doing. Yeah.
Very clever. I think that's going to work for you.
Okay, I think so too. I'm going to really go for it.
We want to thank all of you for coming today, and then I hope you will join me next week for the next episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Have a great week, everybody. Bye bye. Bye, Rich.
Bye.